Well, I just wanted to do the presentation. We've talked about this for a couple of months. But I think I just wanted to kind of show my experiences working, at a city, a municipality level for the last 20 years, two different cities of Fargo across the river and now Moorhead, and just 20 years of how we've been handling, getting our data, our data flow and the product we use to get it to the locators in the field. So, and I'm going to kind of take it into, at the end, kind of take it into what I saw in that American Society of Civil Engineers standard with the data flow that, Bob and I have been kind of pushing around back and forth. And just because our next steps are to kind of get the best practices going, to kind of use that as a springboard into where we take our group 2 next and how we divvy up the work, because it looks to be a bit of a heavy workload. But I think I put our little mission statement for our group in there. Seems kind of corny, but I guess it sums it up. So our initial focus has been for group 2 is just, initially this year, get development going on best practices. And it kind of goes back to what Barb had said at the beginning, just improve the locate efficiencies and our accuracy, do some research on what our data standards and our exchange standards would be around the country, and then how to share that data. In the future, Bob has shown some pretty cool things with some 3D stuff that mostly the LiDAR viewer and the data he's got for download, but new technologies kind of get some look to the future on that for augmented reality and 3D underground. What does it take to do that? I think there's a lot of cities and counties and utility owners out there that really, they might not know what we need, what you need to do that. So start working on it. And this, I think these are slides from an older meeting that just breaks those, breaks some of those points down more. The best practices, get a workflow together for ensuring that, the as-built record drawings are getting into the GIS data, that we're actually getting that stuff, the finished product and the as-built into the data that we're given to the locators, or else our data isn't accurate. And I've heard it discussed many times, and I read it in that ASCE white paper, minimum attributes necessary, kind of addresses security concerns of people not wanting to share. Well, what's the minimum amount necessary for accurate locating? Feedback too, that's probably a missing piece in areas. If something is wrong out in the field, how can we get the original owner's data correct? But just to, and improve everything. What are the different methods that people like me and Bob are using to push this stuff out to people? This I totally plagiarized from a slide Steve had shown earlier. Just some existing viewers and how people are sharing. I was thinking when I was putting this together, it'd be kind of neat to have quick links to these somewhere, either on in our Google Drive stuff, our EPC underground utility area. People that don't know me, I'm from the Fargo Moorhead area. I went to NDSU, seems like a long time ago. Back when we didn't get to use computers very much, it was that long ago. And I just did some database work for Navtech for 2 different companies. I got to go live in England and Scotland for a while. I got to drive on the wrong, got to drive a 5-speed on the wrong side of the road. So for those of you that like clutches, shifting with your left hand is a trick. It's really interesting. I got to field drive. I got paid to drive all over England and Scotland and do artery checks and record attributes and check roads. So that was it was a lot of fun. It was a hell of a job to get paid to do that. I came back in '99 and went to work building Fargo's GIS. And then in 2008, I moved over here to Moorhead, kind of rebuilt their GIS when I wasn't fighting floods. With this, I'm going to show some examples of what we did at Fargo and how we did things. Then the history of Moorhead and how it evolved here, and also what we're doing current day. And then kind of go over and look at, this group 2 stuff from a utility owner. What are the guidelines, this best practices guidelines that ASCE has in that one paper and document? And then kind of look at a little bit of the as-built and the attributes that are showing that I see, existing standards, and stuff they talked about in that white paper. And just some examples of stuff that I've done, hopefully spark some conversation and some comments. This is a program, it was about 2002 or 3. It's all of our traffic signal data. This is a pretty major intersection by the Main Avenue Bridge in Fargo. And this is a little standalone GIS viewer that everybody loved back then, 20 years ago. It was hard installed on every laptop and computer. It referenced files on the network, but it wasn't any kind of a network license. It was the old, what was it called? ArcIMS, forget the name of it now, it's been that long. But it was a neat little program. It was stable. We had it loaded on laptops in the field for staff that did locates and others. I pulled these screenshots from an old presentation, so I didn't include the toolbars on it, unfortunately. This program has long since been retired. Just like this intersection, there's a major roundabout. This whole area was torn out completely. The flood mitigation came through, they redid the bridge. The condos at the bottom are long gone, and there's a big roundabout here now. So this is all just a snapshot of history now. But it kind of proves that things change. Stuff changes, you have to keep up to date, and you have to be able to record it. We did a project. I had an interesting one here for hyperlinking data. You can see this is a sewer tie. It's a private service for property. What is it? 812 on Broadway, house number, and it shows ties to where the Y is and where the private service runs into the house for the sewer service. We had a really anal plumber that did inspections with our building codes department at Fargo, and he had every little house in town drawn out on his little 3x5 inch cards, filed away in a file cabinet that was arranged by his organization structure. And if you went near the cabinet without his permission, he'd come after you. And it was, he protected these things with his life. And he went back like 40 years with these things. And I kind of won his trust. And we were able to take these out before he retired, get them all scanned. I had a young civil engineering student that was interning us for us one winter. And when winter freeze up came, he kept working for us. And so I had him scan these in. There was 27,000 of these. And I had them scanned. He scanned them in one at a time. And I had him give the file name for the JPEG or whatever it was. The file name was the address and street. And then when he was done with large parts of these, I would, just open up a DOS command prompt, run a file list, get the name of all the files. And I converted that to a spreadsheet, which I then geocoded to all the properties in town. And so within one winter, we got 27,000 paper scans attached to the GIS map. So all you had to do is click on the property and you could look at the sewer tie for that. And then these went on to a laptop that the guys out in the field used. And it was the greatest thing they'd ever seen because they'd been carrying around paper books and paper maps and everything was out of date and mud stained and wet. And they couldn't live without this. And they kept this program in their trucks on their laptops for years after the IT department wanted to get rid of it because they refused to give it up because it was so useful to them. And along the same lines, we did all the water curb stops. And I think there were even more of these. I think there was close to 30,000 of these that we linked in this whole program. This is about 20 years ago. And the detail on the cards was really good. This is just screenshots. So all the gate valves, all their gate valve tie and their intersection information from their detailed sheets showing where the gate valves are located and what it connects to and what it shuts off, including the fire department, the hydrant valves as well. And all of our underground tanks. My father was a firefighter for City of Fargo many years ago. Before he retired, he worked for the Fargo Fire. So I kind of had an in with the fire department and I did a lot of stuff for them. And we were able to get all their underground tank information. And we had all their underground tanks marked with all of the permitting and the documentation of all underground tanks, so whether they're hazardous or not. And this is all in GIS as well. And one of the big things we did is every spring they would get together and they would host a dinner one night. And I don't know, the Holiday Inn or the Ramada or someplace. And they called it the Dig In Dinner. And every spring they'd invite all the contractors, the underground contractors, the utility people, and we'd have a big get together. I think back then you could have an open bar, and they'd have it, and then we'd do a presentation for them to show them what the rules were, the regulations rules, how to do this, who to contact for questions about this or that, how to get our data, how can we help. I'd show them some of my online resources, and every year they would meet with all the contractors and have a big formal dinner for them, and it was a good way. It was kind of an outreach program for Fargo, would they, so that they would stay in touch with these people, and face-to-face communication is big. You want to maintain a friendly relationship with everybody. You don't want any contention, so it just worked out fantastic. And then I skipping to the Moorhead stuff. I started at Moorhead in 2008, and this I kind of came and had to start learning, start rebuilding their GIS and get it moved to new software, get it more server based and web map based. But amongst what I found is, some of the original metadata for some of the original data that was delivered to Moorhead back in 1996 and 1995 and 96. And this sheet just shows 3 clips of, the top left is some of the original metadata happens to be from the sanitary sewer. And they included an AutoCAD drawing file and 2 ArcInfo coverages. It was really good metadata, actually. It was very good metadata for the time. There's a lot of us that are not up to date on our metadata even today. I did a screenshot of what ProEst had delivered to us for sanitary storm. There was stuff for tree. They started doing a sign inventory and a sidewalk inventory. But for those, the old school people like me, that bottom right kind of shows that's the contents of the old ArcInfo coverages, Arc attribute tables, the DBF table, the very early days of, desktop GIS. And it's kind of neat to see that again. I still have those files on the server. And then the upper bit is just the old ArcView software, ArcView 3X, the APRs and the Avenue scripted AVX custom applications. Moorhead was really ahead of its time in the late 90s. They hired ProEst to do a lot of neat things for them. They had a lot of neat desktop applications that were based on flood fighting, flood information elevations. They were kind of ahead of Fargo and others at that time. Our utility information came from, even in the late 1950s, they were, the drafting tables. That's what engineering departments were back in the 50s and 60s. They were drafting tables, and drafting tables, ashtrays, and a whiskey bottle in the drawer, from what I hear. But these Mylar sheets were retired yet. He's an old guy that isn't retired yet at Moorhead, and he was the one that did a lot of these back in the early 70s. And he would maintain these in the drawing board. They kept them filed, and it's the sanitary system plotted out. And they're still, so I georeferenced these and had my technician, scan and georeference these so that we could get them in as a background, like an air photo. There's a little section on the bottom there I'm going to zoom in on, that little purple that lights up, and we're going to show this is an area of town. Now, this is kind of today. This is what it looks like today with the GIS data in there. That orange line is a force main running from that lift station. There's a force main running to the east there, the sanitary system. But when you turn on this layer, it's like an air photo in the background for those old scanned Mylars of our original system. You can kind of see information there going back to the 30s and the 40s. What's there? The positioning wasn't perfect, but it was fairly close. But it's nice to be able to go back and see, exactly what was there up until the migration and the conversion to GIS. And we've got this, got these for the whole city. So it's really interesting to go back. Sometimes you have questions, you just got to go back to the source of where all the GIS data came from and look at what they maintained back in the 60s and 70s. And they're persnickety about it. They would draft this stuff on a table, and they took pride in their work. It was, digitization and stuff is kind of bland and generic, but you look at old set of drafted plans, or the guys would do them by hand on a drafting table, and there's some artistry in it. They take pride in it. So they tried to make these as accurate as they could. And then, with the advent of more AutoCAD applications and getting our large scale format plotters in, they realized they could print off these sheets for quarter sections in the city, and they could carry these around in their truck with them. And here's a sheet from South Moorhead, and these were about 30 inches by 30 inches. And it would take up to a month to print all the copies of these out for the books they would need, and organize them and trim them and bind them in these big hard copy massive books. And then they'd throw them in the back seat of the pickup, and off they'd go. And it was nice to have, and it was good they did it at the time. But as soon as we started, just a few years ago, I started moving them towards getting remote tablets and laptops where they can connect to my map services in the field. And now they want more and more of this live look at the database through mapping services. For locating now, starting in the mid 2000s, well, 2005-ish, we had an ArcReader application that we would create for our utility locator. At that time was Vanguard, and they used ArcReader. We would make a project for them. We'd update them maybe twice a year. We'd give them the files, and then whoever was the local supervisor for Vanguard would have to, grab a CD from us and go to all of his staff and grab all of their laptops and do a complete, delete the old program, overwrite it and install the new one, make sure all the supporting data files and directories were included. And then they would use this out in the field in their laptop to do our locating for Moorhead. It was a nice program. It wasn't bad. And you can see the one caveat, it was impossible to get an aerial photo in it. You could not get an aerial photograph in here, and that would have been really nice to have. It was, we could set it up the way we wanted. They did a good job with it. They didn't have too many complaints. There were times they would have a change in staff where a supervisor or some techs would leave, and then new people would come in and they wouldn't know the process, and I wouldn't know that they had new people, so we weren't able to get them updated files and so forth. So, but this was a cheat sheet card I would put on every install disk with instructions of how they could hyperlink to features that we included, like the Y cards for detailed information. So this is like a cheat sheet of here's how you can pull up the hyperlinks by using this tool and follow the directory structure at the bottom on the local hard drive of the laptops. And when you fire it up, everything will run smooth. And they didn't have too bad a problem with it. They actually had nice. Our traffic engineer, who I worked with at Fargo many years ago too, but our traffic engineer at Moorhead, he goes out when he learns there's a new person, and every spring he goes out and he works with the locators, Vanguard and our current locator contractor, and kind of steps them through everything, how they should do this, how they should do that. So he takes a real hands-on approach to working with them and showing them, and because he doesn't like his fiber getting hit, I would imagine. So here's some of the old way they would store the traffic signal data for traffic signal plans, which we couldn't put in the application. We would have to install these files on the CD that they would put on their laptops. Then they'd have to look it up by a directory for, well, traffic signals and related power and fiber would be located in each, in each of the directories for the intersections. And this is all old data now. We don't have to do this. And the same with some project plans, supplemental to the program. If we had newer plan and profile information, we would include a lot of those projects for the common ones where we knew there would be work going on in the next year, and try to just give them as much information as we could. And of course, today it's the ArcGIS Online Map Service. So this is what it looks like. It's downtown Moorhead. This is the REST endpoint, the map service URL that I gave to ELM, our locating contractor right now. So they run this through their system. This map is available free to anybody. It just shows the legend off to the side isn't complete. It's just showing some traffic stuff, but all of our sanitary storm is in here. The purple and the red dashed areas are easements. You can turn the easements layer on to see where, the different utility easements are. And it's nice with ArcGIS Online, you can configure these pop-up windows. So here's for our traffic signal stuff, I got that one conduit highlighted there, and it's showing, within the range where I click, there's 7 features available, and that's that little piece of conduit there that shows some of the attributes. The scroll window goes on further than that, but it just showed that. And another thing, I went past it, but it's nice to be able to have the aerial photo, just have the most current aerial photo available turned on. It helps the locator with the measurement tools and everything, so they can see right where they are and zoom in really close. That building in the center, the 24 with the red and white colored umbrellas, that's the Dairy Queen. So we zoomed in on the Dairy Queen here. But here's the map service. So here's the last 12 months of this map service with all of our utility information on it. And you can see in the past 12 months, it's had 3,600 hits. And it's kind of funny, over a 12-month period, 3656 hits. That's how many, divisible by 10 items per day. That's how many days in the year there are. So it's the chart across the bottom shows, obviously it's used more in the summertime than it is in the winter, because the chart on the bottom goes from February to February. So it's receiving hits. They're using it. Can't ask for more than that. They seem happy with it. You're not worried about not getting updates to guys in the field that are trying to locate by bringing them new files, or relying on them to make sure all of their employees have copies of it installed on their computer and transfer files. So the more we can work towards sharing stuff with map services is good. The chances of error do remain. There's a orange line there that's one of our interconnects for the signals, and it kind of terminates or starts in the middle of Moorhead State University. And that got hit about 2 years ago. That fiber got hit and took down, also a fiber for MSUM got hit. But through the traffic engineer went and talked to them about this to see what happened, kind of like a debrief. But the locator didn't locate that because he didn't think there was anything in the area because there were no traffic signals visible. So, and it just one of those things that happens. He said, well, there's, they got called in for locate. He went and looked, like, well, there's no traffic signals here. There's nothing with the storm and sanitary. So he just, singled it all clear, and then that tip of that fiber got hit. So it pays to, zoom in, everything's turned on. So just do kind of a quick double check. Just one of those things, but nothing's foolproof. But we can try to hope that it is. That's, I guess, what the best practices are for. But the sanitary storm and traffic, I guess the view on the right is kind of how it looks in a GIS database. We've got 3 feature data sets there for sanitary storm and traffic. And those are all the different features and layers within those data sets. And just the legend items on the left are just kind of how they look. That's kind of how they look in the mapping. So they've got quite a bit of different features. Trying to relay it all is always a trick. You can't duplicate symbols, but try to make it clear and use industry standards on some of this. But onto that white paper, I read it through it. It's kind of a standard guideline they want feedback on. I think that Colorado DOT presentation we had a while back, he had called this one out. But some of the takeaways that we have to focus on is get a way of standardizing how we capture and record utility data during the installation, but also go and look and trying to capture it whenever it gets exposed. Take the opportunity when data is exposed and these lines are exposed and dug up, you can take a look at them and verify. Get a common definition for a common way of describing the positional accuracy so everyone can understand. and then the minimum set of data attributes necessary to communicate the position, but also, the type, the function, material status, other information about the assets that we talk about with, minimum required or the least amount to get the best results. The guideline also talks about, how to promote long-term, reliable and functional secure data, facilitate data collection, data management, and data exchange. What I found was interesting was they talked about below ground depths is interesting because everybody always wants to know or talk about how deep something is, but the surface of the ground can change. So always, strive to record, the depth underground, not as, it's 8 feet down, but as a elevation above sea level or with a described datum. And something I'll show later too, but even with those sewer ties and water ties that I showed for Fargo, you got to be careful about what you tie stuff to for a horizontal measurement to tie something off, because, curves, power poles, signs, transformers, that stuff changes. It gets moved, it goes away, new stuff comes in, and that can change over time. Tracking of inventory. This is something, Bob and I have talked about this, Bob at St. Paul and me, trying to chase down the engineers and get the information from them when our projects are done so that we can as-built this stuff and get it into GIS. And this is something I've kind of had going, and it's really a struggle to get feedback from them or to try to get them to help me keep this populated, or keep this up to date. Because you can see that, column A of the spreadsheet shows, what engineering projects we're talking about. And the project number is, it's preceded by the year. So these are 2017, 18, and 19 projects, what the type of it is, and basically, do we need to update utility information in GIS? Is it required or not? And, yes or no. Do we have the utilities? Have they been delivered? Do we need Y cards? Are they updated? I'm building a master point whenever we go out with our survey grade Trimble in engineering and shoot as-builts. I'm gleaning that information, and I'm building a big point database in GIS so that we can have a big point file in GIS that can be added to any of our application maps at any time that shows this is what was as-built. Everything, every curb stop, hydrant, manhole, catch basin, sewer clean out, have everything in there. And then to track, do I actually have these as-builts in GIS? Have these been entered so that we know that we're done? It gets busy year to year and stuff falls out. You don't get it in GIS, you forget about it, next year's busy. Then you got to keep track where the plans are too. So this is a constant struggle with some of us, and this is something that I could use help on. But a spreadsheet, I always accuse the engineers of having spreadsheetitis. They rely on spreadsheets for everything, and it just is not a great way of doing things. It's all I have right now, but I have some ideas on some changes. And when the as-built data is stored in our directory, here's an example for a Johnson Farms edition 2019 project. Under the set directory structure, we've got our as-builts. So there's a CSV file that was shot with our Trimble GPS of the structures. So I've got XYZ and then the comments is basically what the feature is to help locate it, positionally accurate in GIS. Each of the manhole structures gets a report. I think there's like 15 or 20 of them for this project where, there's a hand sheet they fill out by hand, and then we scan that in with information about every single manhole, what it looks like, shape, depth, how many pipes cross there. And then, that little blue square at the bottom, here's a project from 18 where the as-builts are not very well organized. So in the as-built directory, there's a drawing that's named for the engineering project number that says it's an as-built record drawing. And then there's two drawings in there that are basically quantities, which aren't as-builts. And then there's a text file in there called for the name of the subdivision that says it's an as-built. And then there's another drawing in there called as-built. And then there's another text file in there that says it's as-built for columns. And I don't know what that means. So, from my point of view, not having been the project manager of this, I'm not sure which one of those is the one I should use. So then what ensues is me having to track down the engineer and talk to him, and then he doesn't know, and he's going to have to go talk to the surveyor. And so it continues. I found this in that American Society of Engineers too, and it's really similar to the current workflow diagram that Bob Vasquez, that Bob and I have been working on. And we commented the other day, we started laying out this flow chart this way. And then I found this earlier this week in some research. And I mean, I changed the way the flow chart worked, but the chart was the same. So I said, well, I guess the only excuse there is great minds think alike, because the standard care guideline shows, you know, from a project planning standpoint, you should be looking at using quality level D, which means, you know, derive your information from existing records or oral recollections, legacy data. When you enter the preliminary design, try to get a quality level B. You obtain it through appropriate subsurface methods, or, you know, just go through and actually look at it. Final design should be A, precise locations obtained by actual exposure and measurement of these. That's usually, I don't think a lot of us go through that. So at the bottom, I kind of made like a Moorhead example of, you know, for the preliminary design, we're not doing B. We might be doing C, pretty sure we are. And for final design and the test holes and reliability and related utility data, I put those in red because I'm pretty sure we're not doing that either. But that's no one's doing things exactly the same, which is one of our tasks, is to get some of this flow chart working, develop best practices designed off of this, and start writing this stuff up. This was also in that white paper that shows the feature attributes. The big table on the right isn't a complete list, but it's interesting because it does show, you know, the feature attributes, and the columns on the right, you know, with the green header, the feature types, which are also shown in table 2 there on the left, shows whether, you know, a minimum requirement for each of the feature types for each attribute heading down the column, whether it's optional or conditional, and blank, it doesn't apply. So this is a good starting point. People have already worked on this. And then the bottom left corner are kind of some of the examples they give of, you know, what falls into these feature types. What are the utility types? You know, steam, stormwater, electric, heating and cooling, petroleum, and compressed air gas. So this is something if it was Dean or Jeff or Dean had said that if there's might be a lot of work coming Group 2's way, so we're going to have to kind of break this into subgroups, break this up and share the pain. But it's interesting too. I looked back at a screenshot I did from the Point Man demo at our last meeting, and threw in the screenshot from there. So as far as what this device is capturing, and then you look at what this sort of, hey, this is a standard guideline for recording this stuff. There's a few things there. The little green asterisk lights up for. Looks like these things are in that list. So I thought that was interesting. But when we talk standards, you know, this is just a quick screenshot of the Metro Stormwater Project, which is Minneapolis-St. Paul. They're looking at just only a stormwater data standard for transfer amongst the 7 counties that make up Minneapolis-St. Paul. And, you know, these getting into standards is kind of a slippery slope of everybody's got different standards, and the irony of that statement. But it can be kind of a big project, but if we're looking at it to get a generic set of minimum required, it kind of knocks the project down to size. How does Steve say it? Eat the elephant one bite at a time. And along with capturing information while stuff is exposed, this is up here by the Clay County Courthouse and the new jail. They're putting in a storm pond, a little storm pond to drain a parking lot. And so you can see the storm pipe in the background with the flared end section. Well, I don't know if they used our existing data beforehand, and they certainly didn't do, you know, that quality level B or A, because that storm pipe was designed to run, and it runs right through. You can see that first pipe, it's like a 3 or 4 inch white PVC. I never did find out what was in that. We think it was a fiber line running up to the Public Works garage. And then right below that is an abandoned force main. And then the storm line is labeled. And then closest to us is the Forcemain from one of the main lift stations in town. So that just a little outfall to drain a parking lot was designed to go through 4 utilities. And so the guy taking the photo, you can see this is early morning. He's facing west. That's a good friend of mine. And his comment to me when he sent the photo is, it's not our problem. It's an engineering problem. So they had to redesign and move that storm pipe. But this is attached to the Y card for that piece of pipe. And you can see that's the second page of a hyperlink. And the first page of that hyperlink is bottom right. And so along with the pop-up window giving all the information about that sanitary main is a quick hyperlink to the Y card where you store this kind of information. If utilities are exposed and you've got some sort of scale in there, capture that photo, attach that information to the utility, and it'll be there long after I'm retired from the city. The other thing we found, and I'll hurry, I'm running near the end, but the sanitary force main, we've got sanitary force main on the south side of Moorhead, where the locator caps for the locators to hook on for trace wires, were not in our as-built data. They didn't record it. They didn't bother to. And we found some of them. So my technician put together a series of sheets, and they're supposed to go out and find these for us, our engineering techs. And he included screenshot examples. He looked in Google Street View and found some of them. So he made up a series of maps showing, can you go out and get these for us? And here's the map sheet he marked them with high confidence and what needs field verification to go out and get these things and get them in our data so that our locators know right where they can connect to trace. Because these were left out of the as-builts that were delivered to us. I've also seen right-of-way details. So we have these 3 sheets on our website and we give to contractors. So if they're doing work in our right-of-way, this is what you do. Here's how you call in the locates. This is where stuff goes. The whole set of rules and what they have to provide back to us so that we know what's going on. I just came back to our workflow chart again that we need to expand upon. Bob and I have worked back and forth on this, and it'll receive a lot of changes moving forward. This is just the 4th draft. And I'm going to wrap with something that, it might be a little cringeworthy for Barb, but having worked with this stuff, here's a set of plans for my house. In 2004, after we built our house, I did my underground sprinklers. I put in a sprinkler system myself. So I designed it myself, marked it out. Here's my plan sheet. I did a copy of this this is 1 inch is 10 foot. This is all the scale. I took a photo of it with my phone. And after they came out and did all the utility markings, I, of course, drafted this all up. This is all the scale, inches 10 feet. My sprinkler lines are marked blue, and all the other utilities fall with the marking color paint. I included its stringent ties to everything for the gas, electric, power. So I know where everything is on my property. I know where it is. But to tell you the truth, I don't have to say it. Whenever I do a project, I always call in for locates anyway. But I like knowing where everything is. And I did a camcorder. I had an old camcorder. This was 17 years ago. I had a little 8mm video camcorder, and I spent, it's riveting viewing. I spent 45 minutes walking the entire system, peering down in all my handholes to prove for liability that I hand dug around every utility to show that they were clear. And so I have that all on videotape now. And oh yeah, the wife loves putting that in there. So, but it was interesting. It took me about a month to do this project. And then the last slide, I'm done, is one of our talks has been on, one of our items on our list is a common base map. What are our options for a common base map? And this is our ArcGIS Online base map. And we get to put our content on here. About once a year, I update my information. I provide it to Esri, and then it takes them a month or 2 to update their national, it's actually a worldwide topographic base map. So I control the streets, the homes, the water features, the parking lots, the rail, everything in the Moorhead area is my base map. It's our data so that we know it's accurate. And that's a nice feature to have. It's better than, Google or OpenStreetMap or all these others, and everybody might not have the option to do that, but that's what that is, and that's the end of the presentation, and I'll turn it over to Steve.
Well, thank you very much, Brad. Greatly appreciated. Very interesting. So we are running a little late on time, but I think we've got enough wiggle room here for a couple questions if there's anybody out there that would like to add to the discussion.
I had a quick question, Brad. Thank you for the great job in the history lesson as well. So do you do all the utilities in Moorhead? You do the water, and then does the DOT or the county or the city do the right-of-ways? How is that all linked together? Are there different GIS maps?
We have a public service utility that has the electric and the water systems. They're in that group, that they're very secretive with their data. I have access to their water, but to get access to their electrical, you need to sign a form with them. They do their own locating. They have their own in-house locating group, and I cannot remember the software. I can't remember the name of the software package off the top of my head, but they have their own staff do their own locating of their own facilities. And actually, the coordinator over there, Todd Copeland, is a good friend. And they've been busy with a lot of upgrades, and they've had trouble with some software upgrades for GIS. But I would like to get him in on my group with me here too. I'd like to have him be a part of this because he's real experienced.
Thank you. So it's not a one-stop shop. If I am constructing something in Moorhead, I've got to go to two or three different places to get the data.
Yeah, ELM will hit all our stuff, and the Moorhead Public Service will do their own water electric.